Grief, bereavement and the loss cycle. The pandemic of grief. Many people have died of COVID-19 worldwide. We are experiencing mass loss. This virus is threatening every single person with losses of every kind. Social distancing is forcing us to be apart from friends and family. Personal events have been postponed or called off, so we are unable to gather for life's most meaningful celebrations. Public activities and social experiences that brought us together have also been cancelled. Workplaces are shutting or moving to work from home. And town squares stand empty, like ghost towns. While thanks to technology we can still stay in constant contact with one another, we are learning the limitations of digital love and care. So, what is grief? As human beings, whenever our attachments are threatened, harmed or severed, we naturally grieve. We may experience shock and disbelief. We worry, which is a form of fear. We become sad and lonely. We get angry. And we feel guilty or regretful. The sum of all these and any other thoughts and feelings we are experiencing as a result of the coronavirus is our grief. Our pandemic grief will change from day to day, week to week. This virus is fast. As circumstances change, our grief will likely change. And as for the virus itself, it will likely get worse before it gets better. We use this grief cycle to show the 5 stages of grief, which describes the emotional journey of grief and is a useful map for loss as we navigate through the uncharted emotional journey of the COVID-19 pandemic. The 5 stages of grief and loss are denial and isolation, anger and anxiety, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. People who are grieving do not necessarily go through the stages in the same order or experience all of them. Mourning occurs in response to change. In our bereavement, we spend different lengths of time working through each step and express each stage with different levels of intensity. The 5 stages of loss do not necessarily occur in any specific order. We often move between stages before achieving a more peaceful acceptance of change. Everyone grieves differently. Some people will wear their emotions on their sleeve and be outwardly emotional. Others will experience their grief more internally. We should try not judge someone on how they experience their grief, as each person will experience it differently. The first reaction to learning about the pandemic is to deny the reality of the situation. It is a normal reaction to rationalise our overwhelming emotions, and the situation can feel unreal. Denial is a common defence mechanism that buffers the immediate shock of loss, numbing us to our emotions. We block out the words and hide from the facts. We may start to believe that life is meaningless and that nothing is of any value any longer. All emotions can be numbed. For most people experiencing grief, this stage is a temporary response that carries us through the first wave of pain. For some time, many people appeared to be in denial about the risk of this virus. For many of us, it was an event happening in another part of the world. Concerning, of course, but not immediately impactful. Denial is adaptive as it permits us to navigate a world of unpredictable threats without becoming paralysed with fear. Anger. Once denial becomes untenable, our collective anxiety turns to anger and fear of harm, leading to compulsive behaviours, such as hoarding resources and checking. As the masking effects of denial and isolation begin to wear, reality and its pain re-emerge. The intense emotion is deflected from us, redirected and expressed as anger. The anger may be aimed at objects, complete strangers, friends or family. We may feel guilty for being angry, and this only makes us more angry. Anxiety feelings are normal, to be expected. At the start of a crisis, anxiety is adaptive because it is hardwired into us to get us to pay attention, to mobilise for action. Chronic anxiety can cause exhaustion. When that begins to occur, the anxiety turns to depression and demoralisation. And the grief that comes from not only current losses, but also stems from not knowing what losses will come in the future. This is called ambiguous loss, the sorrow over things that are uncertain and incomplete. The first thing we can do is begin to divide our choices into two categories. The things that we can control and those that we cannot. We can't know or control how long this will go on for and how bad it will get. We also can't control other people. But for the things we can control, first we choose what not to do. It's okay just to get by right now. Of the things we can choose, probably the most important one is our attitude. We can still control when we go to bed and when we wake up. We can choose to cultivate our inner lives and explore activities at home. We can choose how much news we consume or how much we engage with others. We can choose to reach out to supportive people and steer away from those who drag us down. We can be kind. We can savour the time spent with our families, and we can notice more. Anger leads to bargaining as we realise the potential harm of this pandemic and the need to enforce social distancing. Bargaining is the normal reaction to feeling of helplessness and vulnerability, and is often a need to regain a sense of control through a series of if only statements, such as, if only we had. This is an attempt to bargain. This is a weaker line of defence to protect us from the painful reality. Guilt often accompanies bargaining. We start to believe there was something that we or others could have done differently to have influenced the outcome. Depression. There are two types of depression that are associated with mourning. The first one is a reaction to practical implications relating to loss. Sadness and regret predominate this type of depression. The second type of depression is more subtle and more private. It is our quiet preparation to separate our attachment to something or someone. Acceptance and making peace. This phase is marked by withdrawal and calm. This is not a period of happiness, but it must be distinguished from depression. Coping with loss is ultimately a deeply personal and singular experience. The best thing you can do right now is to allow yourself to feel the grief as it comes over you. Resisting it only will prolong the natural process of healing. The pandemic is likely to involve a period of depression and post-traumatic reactions before arriving at last to acceptance and growth. But before we get there, we will invariably cycle through all the stages of grief again and again, with each new development, with each new loss. We may face the grief of losing a loved one to this illness and the loss of regular life. There is anxiety about what losses are coming next. We find ourselves in a collective pre-traumatic state currently, with the potential feeling of helplessness and immobileness. We need to increase our sense of agency and choose what we can control, increasing predictability in organising our interior lives. We can plan what we do at home, re-evaluate our expectations, set boundaries, build trust, and move our bodies to increase our felt sense of strength. We need to savour the small moments, reduce our autopilot to boost our serotonin, hug and connect to increase oxytocin and reduce cortisol, and also look for the good in others. Tune in to the silver linings to change your brain chemistry and increase energy and resilience to cope. Foster positive emotions to increase resilience, immunity and clarity of thought-boosting problem solving, judgments, decision making and cognitive flexibility and creativity. How to help yourself and others, emotionally, socially and spiritually. Grief is normal and natural. Grief responds to awareness, attention and expression. You will feel better if you mourn losses. Mourning is being aware of your grief, giving it the attention it needs and deserves, and expressing it outside of yourself. During this time of grief, mourning is the key to these pillars of self-care. When we are feeling the emotional pain of our coronavirus grief, we can tune into it and allow it to teach us what we are really worried, sad, angry, etc. about. Then we can express it. We can talk to others about it in our household, on the phone or online. We can write about it in a journal. We can listen to music or watch movies that help us access, understand and share our feelings. Mourning our grief in these ways helps soften it and gives us the emergency emotional release and sustenance we need to survive. If you've been struggling with beliefs, value, meaning and life goals during the pandemic, you're experiencing the spiritual aspect of grief. And the best way to care for your spirit right now is to be intentional about giving it time and attention. Simply being aware of your emotional, social and spiritual health every day and being deliberate about self-care in those areas will help you and others today as well as in the weeks to come. Be open, honest and kind to yourself and to each other. Reach out for professional support if needed. Thank you for watching this video on grief during the COVID-19 pandemic. We hope this has informed you about the grief cycle and how to look after yourself and others during this time. See you next time.